Hello, and welcome to another Half Pint session. Today, after many technical difficulties, I have Judith McQuoid on the show. She is the author of this book, Giant. I describe this as probably the most charming book that I've read in probably at least a year. Because as I'm sitting on the couch reading my books, my wife will occasionally say, "How's that one?" And this one is absolutely delightful, and so we're very happy to have the author of this book here today. Judith, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. It's good to be here.
Well, would you mind just kicking things off by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself? Because as anyone would be able to tell from your accent, you're clearly a Texan.
Yeah. So I live in a tiny village, about half an hour west of Ireland. You can possibly hear the wind blowing and the rain, the wind down the chimney and the rain on the window. It's a terrible day. Um, I was born in Ireland. I was born in the north of Ireland. My parents are from here, but we left Northern Ireland in the 70s and we went to live in Texas. I don't have much of a Texas draw left. Um, so I did quite a lot of my growing up in Texas, and then we moved to England, and then eventually I made my way back home. So
Mhm.
uh, I'm married to Colin. He's a high school headmaster, and we have two sort of grown-up kids. So
Yeah. Well, we also have terrible weather here today, which is actually why I'm wearing the Irish sweater that
yeah.
my
Mm.
wife bought for me the last time we were in Ireland. I've actually never made it to the north. We've always done the south
Okay.
one of these days, but we have three
You have to
children,
do
so
it.
so driving with small children is exhausting. So it needs to be near a really good airport.
Yeah, well, you have to do it. And Northern Ireland is great for kids. The North Coast is amazing for kids. So
Well, I mean, honestly, after reading your book, I want to give my son a and daughter wooden swords and send them off to go and fight in the ruins of a castle. So yeah, let's talk about this book. First of all, would you mind just telling people what is it? What is it about? What story are they going to read in here?
So it's the story of two boys growing up in Belfast at the turn of the 1900s, early 1900s. They're both from the same city, but they live very different lives. So one boy, Davy, is a shipyard boy, and the other boy, Jack, comes from a middle class family, and he happens to be the young C.S. Lewis. So they're two real boys,
Hmm.
but their friendship is fictional, as far as I know. So it's just the story of their friendship and the impact that they have on each other.
Now, I would hope most people that are watching on this channel know who the Jack is that you're referring to. But who is Davy? Because you said he's a real person.
Yeah, so Davy is actually based on my grandfather, Davy McQuoid. So my dad was a pastor, and he was a little bit obsessed with C.S. Lewis. And
As all right-thinking men are.
yes, of course. And when we were in Amarillo, actually, he read all the Narnia stories to me, with a full cast of voices. Being a preacher, he's quite the performer. So that was an amazing experience. So when my dad passed away quite a few years ago now, I consoled myself with his story. So I started looking into his family history, which I'd never really done before. And his dad actually died a few months before I was born, so I never knew him. And I remember the day when I realized that my grandfather Davy had been born not that far away from Jack Lewis, at about the same time,
Hmm.
in the same part of Belfast. And that just set my imagination absolutely flying. Do you know, maybe they recognize each other from the sweet shop on a Saturday morning, or maybe sometimes they got the same tram home on a Thursday evening, or do you know, could it be that they did bump into each other occasionally, you know, and it just kind of started from there. So yeah, Davy is was a shipyard boy, and he's based on my dad's dad. So
Now, did you grow up hearing stories about your grandfather's life, or was this when you began your research that you started learning more about him? Because in my two sides of the family, I knew my maternal grandparents very well, but my paternal grandparents, I never knew my grandfather, and I think I met my paternal grandmother just once, at least to
Right,
my
yeah.
memory.
So, yeah, I have a similar situation for me actually. I didn't know my dad's side of the family really at all. And to be honest, I think there's maybe more fiction in Davy's side of the story than there is in Jack's. So
Hmm.
I tried to stick to Jack's Lewis really, really closely, but I still don't know that much about my own grandfather. Um, so there's more license in his story than there is in Jack's, I think.
Mm. And that was noticeable. One of the things I really liked about your book is you didn't beat the reader over the head with certain things. There's just enough hints of what's going on. Like I think one of the first things I noticed was the question of the Lewis boys playing outside and the fear of them, getting a cold. And
Mhm.
if you've read the Lewis family papers or some of what Lewis wrote in his own letters or Warnie's diaries, you know exactly what this is, but you give the reader enough of enough clues to see what's going on here without sort of, hey, I've discovered this fact and I am now going to impart this to you.
Yeah, and also, do you know, some of those things which seem like odd facts from a distance actually are just part of normal Irish life.
Mm.
Do you know, certainly back then, and even to some extent now as well, do you know, so some of those things that seem odd actually aren't that odd to us.
And I mentioned before we started recording that your book has changed something about next season of Pints with Jack. It was from reading this, I really realized we haven't explored Lewis's Irishness anywhere near as much as we should. So we have some guests already scheduled for season 10 to
Brilliant.
to go and talk about that. But would you mind saying something about Lewis's Irishness? And also, it's very noticeable in the book that you call him not Jack, but Jax with an S.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I had heard sort of on the grapevine that he was very much still known as Jax
Hmm.
in Belfast. If anybody even remembered or knew that a lot of people in Belfast still don't know that he's from Belfast.
Well,
Um,
we English have basically claimed him at this point. It's just like, he lived most of his life in Oxford. He's ours now.
yeah. Um, but I went to his church the first time I went to his church, and I got talking to someone who remembered the Lewis family and remembered the Greaves family as well. And actually, um, I think I referred to him as Jack, and she stopped me and said, "Not Jack, he's Jax. Everybody here calls him Jax." So, I had to make sure that I got that name right, I think. Just for the local sense, I think, they would have been writing me letters if I hadn't called him Jax. Um, but yeah, I mean, he always thought of himself as an Ulsterman, as an Irishman. He never saw himself as anything else. He was, of course, born in the north of Ireland before there was a Northern Ireland.
Hmm.
So, politically, that kind of confuses matters. Um, but I just think that Ireland and his upbringing is all over his writings and all over his life. And I've been really focused on his visits to Ireland after 1910 when he started boarding school in England, and he came back. It's between 70 and 80 times he came back to Ireland.
Mm.
And not just the north of Ireland, he loved the whole of Ireland. He loved Donegal. He traveled all over Ireland with Warren often. Um, but yeah, it really was a part of him, and I think we have massively underestimated that.
Mm. Now, this is your first book, is that correct?
It is, yeah.
So, what made this be the your first book? What was it that made you actually sit down, write it, and get this thing published? Because people will know I've written a couple of books, but God, editing is tedious.
Yeah.
So that's hard, and I think that needs more peace and quiet than three children was going to allow me just yet.
Yeah.
So, what made you pull the trigger on this one?
I think I only started to write when we moved back home. So I accidentally retired from teaching at that point. So I only started writing in 2011. And this was the second thing that I wrote, but the first thing that I got published.
Mm.
And I have worked on this for a long time. I did work on Giant for a ridiculous amount of time, but I had to get everything right. Do you know, Jack Lewis is important to me, and I had to get him right. I had to get the Lewis family right. I had to get the shipyards right.
Mm.
I had to get Belfast right. So it took a lot of time. But I'm very fortunate to be with a lovely, small, independent Irish publisher based in Dublin who have been really enthusiastic about it. So.
Mm. And I've got to say the final production quality is lovely. I love these like little hardback books with a wonderful, wonderful picture at the front. You start noticing little nods here and there, pointing forward to some things that he's going to be writing.
Yes, it's only hardback in America. It's not hardback here.
Oh my
It's paperback
goodness.
here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ireland, you're missing out. It's lovely in
Yeah.
hardback, I have to say. Now, when your book first arrived, my son is always very interested in the things that I
Mm.
get in the mail. And he said, Daddy, what's that? And I said, Oh, it's a book called Giant. Giant. And I said, Would you like me to read some to you? And he was enjoying it, but it really bugged him. It's like, Daddy, when are the giants coming? So when my son is a little older and watches this video, who's the giant in this story?
Yeah, so there's actually lots of giants in the story. One of the first giants that they encounter is actually on the front cover.
Mm,
And it's from the first book that Davy borrows from Jack
there we go.
is a cop, that's it. It's great, yeah. Um, is a copy of Gulliver's Travels because that hill with the giant's face on it, which sort of sits overlooking Belfast, is supposed to have inspired Jonathan Swift to write Gulliver's Travels. So that was the first giant that they encountered in the story. Finn McCool obviously
Now,
plays a
now
part.
explain who he is, because not everyone's going to know.
Okay, so Finn McCool is a mythological Irish giant who is supposed to have created the Giant's Causeway. So there's a little scene in the middle of the book at the Giant's Causeway as well. Um, the shipyard as well is thought of creating giants. At the
The
time
Titanic.
of this, yeah, at the time of this book, the Titanic and the Olympic are both in the yard. Um, so giant is a reference to those as well. And of course, Jack Lewis himself is
Hmm.
a literary giant. So yeah, there's lots of different giants in the story.
Now, you mentioned Gulliver's Travels and alluded to the books that are
Mhm.
inside your book. And
Yeah.
I've listened to some other interviews you've done, and it's funny. You can tell everyone's cut from the same cloth. It's like I love books where they talk about other books.
Yeah.
But this idea of literature and books taking you to other places is a really strong theme in the book, in your book. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about how Lewis's love of literature gets imparted to your
Mm.
grandfather?
Yeah. So um, Davy doesn't have many books in his home, so he has a copy of Treasure Island, which is another story. That's a little nod to my dad because, as well as Narnia, he also read me Treasure Island.
I
Um,
gotta say, terrifying book. I reread it as an adult. I was like, why was I read this?
yes, it is. Yeah, it is extraordinary. Um, so he has a Bible and in the house and Treasure Island and a couple of Andrew Lang's fairy books that belong to his sister, and that's about all he has in his house. But Davy's a bright lad. He just doesn't have the opportunities because they have no money. They're a very poor family. So he starts to borrow books from Jack's. Um, and I think the books that Jack's read, which were very wide, when he was a child, we've also, as well as underestimating Ireland, I think we've underestimated the impact of those stories on him. and on his imagination as well. So I wanted to bring in Beatrix Potter and Mark Twain and Arthur Conan Doyle, these amazing stories that shaped his so early imagination.
Mm.
And the impact that those stories begin to have on Davy as well, just the opportunity to read and explore and expand his imagination is really important in the story.
Mm. And I often think it's kind of funny that Lewis read much more widely and deeply and earlier than most of us. But then most of us end up getting Narnia fairly early on, which is kind of a distillation of all of that. It's kind of like
Right,
he loved McDonald, and I like McDonald a good lot, but what he says Fantasties did for him, Narnia, I think, did for most other people.
right. Yeah. I think we're a generation further away from McDonald, I think, aren't we?
Just a little bit
Uh,
harder. Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad dropped in McDonald into my life as well. I've realized in more recent years. I knew that he had bought me The Princess and the Goblin, but I realized now that he was buying me other things as well and getting me to read more McDonald as well. Very sneaky.
It's very sneaky. I like that. I like that. It's I hope my son looks back at me one day and realizes all of the stuff that I've been slowly sneaking into his literary
Yeah,
diet. Um,
so good.
now, springing from literature, I want to talk about play because my
Mm,
favorite part of this book is when the kids are playing together. But you see how it's been formed and shaped by the books that they've both read.
yeah, yeah.
How do you begin writing like that? Because as I was reading it, I was sort of having flashbacks to my own childhood.
Hmm.
I'd almost forgotten how I used to play, because
Mm.
particularly when we're talking about running around with wooden swords with friends, that was what I think I pretty much did between 1985 and 1990.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a writer, you have to get in touch with that child. You have to allow yourself to play. You have to allow time for daydreaming. Daydreaming becomes valid all of a sudden.
Mm.
Um, and I think in a way, Davy came from that generation where his childhood was kind of stolen, because they were so lacking in money.
Mm.
He was going to have to go and work, um, and get employment and be paid from a very early age. And I think somehow there's this connection with this current generation of children that we're in danger of their play and imagination and storytelling. We're in danger of that being stolen for different reasons
Mm.
now, that it's been replaced by media instead of actual imagination. Um, so yeah, I think um, storytelling is and story reading are connected and are really, really important parts of growing up, I think.
Mm. We have three kids. The oldest are 4 and 2. And it's
Gosh.
really funny listening to them when we're emptying the
Mm.
dishwasher or preparing food in the kitchen, hearing them play now, because it's really obvious to me that they've been read a lot of books because you hear them narrating what's happening.
Right.
And
Yeah.
my personal favorite is when I hear them trying to do voices. Because that's one thing that I do insist upon. Yeah, as I've read them Narnia, it's like we have to have voices for each of the characters so we know who's
You do.
talking.
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, I'm diving into boxing at the minute.
Okay.
And I find that really encouraging because they're just boy stories.
Hmm.
They're kind of hard to read because
Also written by very young boys. I heard that
yeah,
they were going to be making an animated series based on it. I haven't heard anything about that in a couple of years now.
yeah, I had heard that. Yeah, yeah, but I just, as a storyteller, I suppose I find it really encouraging that everybody starts somewhere.
Hmm.
They weren't perfect stories by any means. They were just something created by very young boys.
And honestly, parts of it kind of boring. I think those are probably Warney's
Yeah.
bits. This is like, well, let's talk some more about train timetables.
Yeah, yeah, terribly dull. So yeah.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I've described your books as charming and cozy, but with a certain sense
Mm.
of impending doom. Because anyone who has read a lot of Lewis or just read Surprised by Joy will crack open this book and have a rough idea of how old the boys are at this point, and they know
Hmm.
Lewis's mother, Flora, is not long for this world.
Hmm.
Yeah, handle that because it it was there as a shadow. You know it's coming, but you still managed to what a better word, whimsy in the story. Kind of like if people have seen Life is Beautiful, La Vita è Bella. It's the most bizarre movie in the world because it's
Mm.
about something absolutely
Mm.
horrific in the Holocaust. But there's a charm and warmth to it at the same time. How do you try and
Mm.
balance that?
But isn't that what life is like anyway? Do you know? And
Mm,
children recognize that life is a mixture of happiness and sadness, and that terrible things happen. And I think if you try and deny, I think, you know, some generations of parents have tried to deny that bad things happen and try to protect children from bad things happening, but you can't entirely protect children. And I agree with Lewis that children need preparation and
mm,
acknowledgement that bad things happen, um, but that the world is still wonderful. You know, some horrendous things happened to Jax Lewis.
mm,
And yet he was able to write the most beautiful, wonderful stories, and be the most fantastic friend to people, and amazing brother to Warney. Um, so yeah, I think life is like that. It is a mixture of whimsy, if you like, of good things, of goodness in the world, but also of terrible sadness and heartache as well.
mm.
I think Jack knew about both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, your book put me also in mind of Becoming Mrs. Lewis, which was a fictionalized version of the story between C.S. Lewis and Joy Davidman Gresham, who he later married.
Yeah.
Insofar as it gives you a different take on the material, not in terms of factual content. Lewis has an essay, Meditation in a Tool Shed, where he talks about the difference between
Mm,
looking at a beam of light coming into a shed
mm,
and looking
yeah.
along it. And this is a really nice way of looking along
Mm,
a somewhat fictionalized version of Lewis's childhood to understand the world that he lived in
mm,
and to see some of the important elements which shaped the Lewis that people who read the Screwtape Letters and Mere Christianity, that you can start tracing back to things that began much earlier.
mm, yeah.
One of the criticisms I've heard of Surprised by Joy is what Lewis focuses on and what he skips over. Some people make a big deal
Right.
of the fact that he skips over a lot of his wartime experience. But
Mm,
I just take him at his face value in terms of it didn't change his worldview a whole lot. He was a pretty pessimistic kid even
yeah.
before he got to the trenches.
Yeah.
But he spends so much time on his childhood and on some of those early
Mm,
experiences of joy and what he read.
mm,
I'm just going to take him at his word that this is the thing that was more important in forming him.
right.
And I think your book gives you a wonderful window into that, particularly if you're unfamiliar with some of the works that he cites in Surprised by Joy.
Mm, yeah. And I think, Tolkien talks about the cauldron of story.
Mm,
And I think we've got enough years between Jack's actual life and 2025, 26 now, where he's his story is at that point now where we can throw it into that cauldron of story,
mm,
and we can tell his story from a different point of view other than his own.
yeah. Well, this was your first book. What do you have planned? More, I hope.
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a study guide for Giant because
Okay.
I think, for homeschoolers particularly, it would be helpful because I picked up a lot of stuff as I was working on this, which
Hmm.
might be helpful, So I'm working on a study guide which will go through Giant chapter by chapter, and it includes Irish history and Irish geography and a little bit of Lewis biography and the Lewis family, bits about each book that's mentioned in there. So I'm working on that at the minute. Um, I'm also working on a story set in the lane that I walk on every morning with my collie dog. Um, it's set in contemporary Ireland, but everybody is 6 inches high, so it's a little bit mythological as well. And an idea occurred to me over Christmas for a children's story set in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, which I never in a million years thought I would write about. But that is intriguing to me. And I noticed that I have set aside a notebook for that, which is a big step for me. And I've started to make notes on that. So we shall see.
Wonderful. Well, we're planning on doing Surprised by Joy probably in season 11. So
Wow.
that will dovetail very nicely.
Oh, great. Cool.
Judith, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, David.
Where can people go to find out more about you? Do you have a website, social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as Judith McQuoid, and judithmcquoid.com is my website as well. So,
All right. Links will be in the show notes. And
brilliant.
viewers, please join us again next time. We'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.